Pelosi, we value hearing from you.
Hi Nancy, it's me, your old friend Trista. I'm running for president that in 2028. That is, if we have elections, haha. Anyway, so I am calling you to get on your case and to remind you that this nightmare that we are now experiencing in America is greatly responsible to you because you signed in, you swore in all these insurrectionists in Congress days after the January 6th insurrection. So that makes you complicit, Nancy Pelosi. I don't know why on earth you would do such a thing. And then what's worse is to allow these mobsters and traitors to our country push you and the entire country around. Bunch of mobsters and traitors, and it's all because you allowed them to be sworn in days after the January 6th insurrection. I just wanted you to know that, and I'm recording this. I'm going to put it all over social media because the Democrats really need to impeach. We have had it. We have had enough. You guys have...
10 seconds of recording time left.
You abdicated your responsibility, and we're going to hold you to it. Impeach him again, you stupid motherfuckers. We've had it with your spinelessness.
To send your message, press 1. To send your message as urgent...
I'll go camp out on the Capitol steps and lead the chants. Impeach them all now. Impeach them all now. Impeach them all now. Impeach them all now. Do that for 24 hours straight. Okay? Got any volunteers? Anybody? All the people in D.C. and all the... Tell your chaplain and your priests... All the priests and nuns, the Buddhists, ask them to come and attend our Congress
Fred Lewis
memorial sit-in for peace and justice and removal of the entire damn regime and give us snap elections. Give us snap elections. Give snap elections. Give snap elections. We'll do that for an entire day. Okay? I commit to do that. And also Venmo me so I will buy a big ass. Actually, I have big ass speakers. All I need is the cords or whatever, and to send them to DC.
or rent some.
Let's set it up 24/7 music festival. I'll do it.
Go
I
get
volunteer.
the permit.
Send me to DC, Venmo me. I'll freaking do it. I'll camp out there.
Somebody get
The
the
police
permit
stole
for the
all my
24-hour
animals, so
music festival in DC.
I'm free to go. And by the way, Diaper Donald's behind the police persecution, but I'm shutting down all 3 agencies. Scroll back and check it out. I'm going to the Pima County Board of Supervisors and the Tucson City Council every damn meeting and demanding the removal of 3 heads of these 3 agencies, including Sheriff Nanos,
can do it too.
Laura Conover, the DA.
Show up.
When's the con going to be over, Laura? Better give my dog back now, Pack, and Monica Dangler, the
back
head of
our
Pack.
country.
All of them need to be removed. I volunteer to be interim.
Volunteerism.
Interim sheriff, interim DA, interim head of Pack. I guarantee it. I'll do a damn better job, and I won't actually torture
Spicy
animals
language,
like what Pack did to my animals. Give my service dog back. It's a violation of the ADA. He is ADA protected,
Worst
federally
case of
protected service
institutional
dog.
animal cruelty
He's a
in
medically
American history.
alert, medical necessity service dog, and this is going
Battling
down as
in-
more intentional
battling
emotional
in the
distress
courts
on
right
me
now.
to deprive person with disabilities of their medically necessary service dog. Repost and help me save my pets. You must return him to Trista, PresidentTrista@gmail.com. Return him now. This is the last known picture I have of him, and he was taken and perfectly healthy. Here's a PS.
Abuse of power, as artist Jenny Holzer once reminded us, comes as no surprise. It rarely announces itself with a drum roll. It arrives instead with paperwork, body cameras, and the quiet confidence that no one will be held accountable. On a gray Minneapolis afternoon, that confidence ended with a gunshot. The video is hard to watch, not because it's chaotic, but because it's chillingly calm. An ICE agent stands near a vehicle. A woman, later identified as Renee Goods, is attempting to leave. Words are exchanged. Laughter is audible. Moments later, the agent fires point blank into her face. What happened next, politically, rhetorically, and culturally, may be even more disturbing than the shooting itself. The footage shows something critical. At no point does the agent appear trapped beneath the vehicle. In fact, he steps into its path twice. Law enforcement trainers have a name for this: a fatal funnel, or officer-killing stance, a position departments explicitly train officers not to assume. A retired law enforcement officer consulted afterwards summarized it bluntly: there is no imminent threat visible here. The danger is self-created. In the video, Good turns her steering wheel away. The car does not accelerate toward the agent. He attempts to open a locked door. He escalates. Then he fires. These are not interpretations. They are visible actions frame by frame. And yet, within hours, the narrative was sealed. How the narrative was captured: before the smoke cleared, federal officials, Kristi Noem, labeled the incident an act of domestic terrorism.
Actually, it's state terrorism. Speed of evidence, smoking gun evidence of state terrorism. So I'm calling on Merkins to demand the immediate arrest and charge with homicide, I believe it is. And here's a shout out to all the governors and the attorneys general to prepare yourselves for snap elections. We're going to replace the entire government. We're going to impeach the entire government. Y'all need to be called Gavin Newsom instead of just trolling this POS. Stop wasting everybody's time and call on Congress to impeach. So the Department of DHS Secretary Noem's press briefing leaned heavily on fear while offering remarkably little detail. Video evidence was downplayed. Independent witnesses were ignored. A physician who attempted to render aid was reportedly threatened with arrest, an allegation visible in circulating footage that DHS has not publicly addressed. The message was clear: the story was not up for debate, but stories don't work that way anymore. Laughter, gender, and the fragile ego of authority. One detail keeps resurfacing online: the laughter. According to multiple accounts, the agent was mocked, told essentially to be a big boy and go eat lunch. It was not a threat. It was not violence. It was ridicule. Life coach Luke on TikTok pointed out something many women immediately recognized: men have lost control and lives over far less. Margaret Atwood once wrote, "Men are afraid women will laugh at them. Women are afraid men will kill them." Men are afraid women will laugh at them. Women are afraid men will kill them. And the statistics support that irrational fear. The footage shows an enraged response to embarrassment, not danger, and that distinction matters. There's another layer here that DHS has avoided entirely: appearance, masked agents, unmasked, unmarked vehicles, no visible warrants, no identification. These are tactics historically associated with criminal abduction, not lawful policing. When law enforcement becomes indistinguishable from criminality, public trust collapses. That is not rhetoric, it is constitutional doctrine. Courts have repeatedly emphasized the necessity of clear authority and due process. So the question becomes unavoidable: how is the public supposed to distinguish lawful enforcement from kidnapping? And why is Congress silent? A broader pattern is that the Minneapolis shooting did not occur in a vacuum. It happened amid the mass pardoning of January 6th participants. First day that diaper dumpster fire was clawed his way back in office instead of going to fucking prison where he belongs. The rapid expansion of DHS enforcement budgets, they're the most weaponized military against civilian population there is. And why isn't anybody bringing that up? Posse comitatus.
yet another millionth reason and to impeach him and his entire criminal regime. I have prepared 100 plus Congress-ready resolutions to do just that, posted on my Substack, Trista naman. Steve Bannon once described this tactic plainly. Flood the zone with shit. When everything is outrageous, nothing sticks. One crisis eclipses another. Epstein files disappear beneath ICE headlines. Health questions vanish beneath manufactured outrage. Accountability is perpetually postponed. Great job, diaper dumpster fire. Only the worst criminal in human history, as Noam Chomsky described you, would be able to, you're the best at criminality, okay, bro? I'd like to coin a new term for the DSL, and that is a crimeaholic. Somebody who is just addicted to crime and other people suffering. Speaking of suffering, everybody needs to listen to the Sasha Riley interview. The box of puppies. Who's Maria? Who's Patricia? Who's Samantha? Diaper dumpster fire. And what's this about? You get a tent peg in the ass? Nobody deserves it better, my friend. Here's some questions for the spineless fucking members of Congress. Why did the agent step into the vehicle's path? Why was lethal force deployed when retreat was clearly possible and inevitable, if not for his intentional escalation, which is state terrorism? I'm calling on the American people to demand state terrorism charges against these officers. All of them. And all the governors and attorneys general need to inform the population that there's going to be snap elections. We're going to have a whole new government month. Yay! Because the existing government's going to impeach itself. Do the right thing and just get the fuck out of Dodge. Why were medical responders allegedly threatened? Why was terrorism label applied before an investigation concluded?
Why did you refuse to allow an investigation?
Why has Congress failed to convene public oversight hearings? Since silence is not neutrality, it is consent. So Congress, there you go. It's not neutrality that you're doing. We're waiting for midterms. There ain't gonna be no fucking midterms, idiots. How many times do we have to tell you? You're complicit, motherfuckers. That's why you need to step down, all of you. Resign en masse. 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 Democracy does not collapse all at once. It erodes quietly through normalized abuses and unchallenged narratives. Minneapolis was not just a shooting, it was a test of oversight, courage, of whether laughter at power has become a capital offense. So far, the institutions charged with protecting civil liberties have failed. And that future failure is the real story. If abuse of power comes, it's no surprise that neither should resistance. So Rolling Stone editors, I'm ready to pitch an investigative features article examining the Minneapolis ICE shooting involving renegades. I'm also submitting this pitch it to The Guardian, BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three, BBC Four, BBC Radio, HuffPost, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, Miami Herald. Please tag your representatives below and let them know that you want them to impeach the entire government and give us snap elections and a whole new one. I'm Trista, your interim president, and I approve this massage. Have a blessed day, y'all. Keep the faith and give them hell. Congress-ready resolution number 100, a resolution to impeach the entire federal government for chronic failure to govern. Whereas the United States Congress has confused holding office with holding press conferences, and whereas both major political parties have demonstrated an advanced allergy to accountability, courage, and basic arithmetic when counting votes, and whereas impeachment is treated as either a fundraising email or an abstract concept that last encountered in a civics class no one attended, and whereas the American people are trapped in a long-running hostage situation called bipartisanship in which neither side will cut the red wire, and whereas James Madison warned in Federalist number 10 that political factions would endanger the republic, and America replied, cool, let's try 2 permanent ones, funded by billionaires. Whereas the Constitution has been repeatedly invoked as a prop, a shield, and a suggestion, but rarely enforced, resolved that the House symbolically impeaches itself for criminal levels of inaction, the executive for executive overreach, treason, domestic terrorism, state terrorism, and reality distortion, the judiciary for mistaking lifetime appointments for lifetime immunity, resolves that the American people are formally apologized to for letting this go on far too long, gaslighting voters with phrases like norms, decorum, and after the election, treating authoritarianism as a branding exercise. Resolved that snap elections be demanded by the public within 30 days, supervised by independent observers, sunlight, and adults. Resolved that money be removed from politics and replaced with ideas, debates, and the ability to answer a question directly. Resolved that term limits be imposed so aggressively that Congress briefly remembers what it feels like to miss a job. Resolved that the author of this resolution is explicitly exempt, having neither held power nor refused to act while holding it. Congress is very busy fundraising, busy blaming, busy explaining why now is not the right time to act. Again, so I did what any exhausted citizen would do in a functioning democracy. I wrote the resolutions myself, not because I want power. God, no, I retired from the 9-to-5 grind years ago to become a volunteer, which is apparently more than can be said for the people drawing congressional salaries. This isn't ambition, it's triage. When both parties refuse to enforce the Constitution, that's not moderation, that's negligence. When accountability becomes a partisan sport, democracy becomes a spectator event. And when no one is willing to pull the emergency brake, eventually a civilian reaches for it. That's me, clipboard in hand, democracy in distress. James Madison warned us about factions. We turned them into corporations. The founders feared tyranny. We rebranded it as electability. So yes, I wrote impeachment resolutions, not because I'm special, but because Congress isn't doing its job. Someone had to notice the building was on fire. In response to years of constitutional paralysis, partisan cowardice, and performative governance, civic volunteer and public watchdog Trista di Genova, and that's me, has released a series, 100 plus, in fact, released on my Substack, Trista di Genova, a series of satirical Congress-ready resolutions demanding accountability, snap elections, and a government that functions. These documents are satire, but the crisis is real. When elected officials refuse to act, citizens are forced to remind them what their job is. The resolutions call for enforcement of constitutional checks and balances, an end to permanent political factions, emergency elections, accountability without party protection. Citizens are encouraged to share the resolutions freely, call the Congressional Switchboard at 202-224-3121, demand action, not excuses. This is not radical. It's remedial civics. I'm Trista, your interim president, and I approve this massage. Have a blessed day, y'all. And give them hell. Impeach them all now and send them to the fucking Hague. I asked for 5 minutes of Congress's time. I didn't ask for power. I asked for 5 minutes. 5 minutes to remind Congress that democracy doesn't run on autopilot. 5 minutes to say what happens when institutional freeze and citizens are told to wait quietly while everything burns politely. I'm a comedian posing as an undercover investigator on behalf of the public, which frankly shouldn't be necessary, but here we are. I recently graduated with the 4.0 from HMI because if the country is going to gaslight itself, someone should at least be trained to in suggestion and de-escalation. Democracy is a muscle, people. Use it or lose it. The project isn't about replacing government. It's about reminding it what it's for. Someone has to knock on the door and ask, are you still in there? Members of Congress, I'm not here because I want your job. I'm here because you stopped doing it. When accountability becomes optional, democracy becomes decorative. When enforcement disappears, the Constitution becomes a prop. And when everyone waits for someone else to act, nothing happens except damage and death and destruction. This is not radical. This is maintenance. You don't need better messaging. You need movement. You need action. The American people deserve a government that responds to crisis with action, not delay, not polling, not fundraising emails. Do your damn jobs. If you won't, history will notice. So will I. So will everybody in this fucking country. Blessed country, excuse me. Thank you for the 5 minutes you didn't think anyone would ask for. I accept your invitation to speak to Congress and chew you all out and demand snap elections and replace the entire government and send Diaper Chump and his entire Nazi regime to the fucking Hague. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And I am Trista, your interim president, and I approve of this massage. Have a blessed day, y'all.
Hey there, Merca. It's me, your interim president, and it is my goal to entertain you, I suppose. So, especially until we get all these criminals safely behind bars. So I'm making good on my promise to, let's come up with a new plan for a new government. And thank you, Diaper Donalds, and thank you for your attention to this matter. Roy Khan, did you hear that? Roy Khan, that was Diaper Donald's mob attorney mentor. That's why he has gamed the system so expertly. Money laundering billions for the rest. That's how he bankrupted casinos. Don't you get it, Merca? Anyway, so we've got to remove the regime now. We have to tell Jack Smith to please do your damn job and indict all these insurrectionists. Where's their insurrection charges? In fact, just for that purpose, I've created my own as a contribution to public safety and continuity of the U.S. government, because really we've been overrun by Nazis, man. That's my first immediate reaction on November 6th. That's why I declared myself president. Why not? Who else is going to do it? Who else wants to? That's you have to be a dragon slayer. But I just want to be the coolest American president, and then I'll just retire into, then maybe I'll serve on the Supreme Court. That'd be fun.
A resolution calling for the impeachment, expulsion, and immediate resignation of Senator Rafael Edward Ted Cruz of Texas for dereliction of duty and providing aid and comfort to an insurrection. Whereas Senator Ted Cruz has repeatedly abandoned his constituents during times of declared emergency and public crisis, most notably leaving the state of Texas during Winter Storm Uri in February 2021, while millions were without power, heat, or potable water. And whereas such conduct constitutes a gross dereliction of the fundamental duty of a public official to remain present, accountable, and responsive during emergencies affecting life and safety. And whereas Senator Cruz has demonstrated a pattern of placing personal convenience above public service, eroding trust in democratic governance, and whereas Senator Cruz played a leading role in efforts to overturn the certified results of the 2020 presidential election, including sponsoring objections to lawful electoral college votes on January 6, 2021, and whereas these actions provided political justification, moral encouragement, and material support to an insurrection that violently attacked the United States Capitol, and whereas Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution prohibits any person who has engaged in insurrection or given aid or comfort thereto from holding public office, and whereas public officials are held to a higher standard precisely because democracy cannot survive leaders who flee responsibility or undermine constitutional order. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Congress is called upon to initiate impeachment proceedings against Senator Ted Cruz for high crimes and misdemeanors, including dereliction of duty and abuse of public trust. The United States Senate is urged to expel Senator Ted Cruz pursuant to Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution. Senator Ted Cruz is called upon to resign immediately, recognizing that his continued presence in office undermines democratic legitimacy. Congress shall affirm that no individual who aided or encouraged insurrection may lawfully serve in public office under the 14th Amendment. I'm Trista, your interim president, and I approve this massage. Have a blessed day, y'all. Give him hell! Members of the House, what are you waiting for? Because whatever you think this moment is, it is not normal, it is not sustainable, and it is not what you swore an oath to defend. You did not swear an oath to a party, you did not swear an oath to donors, you did not swear an oath to delay. You swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, and many of you violated it the moment you certified power without enforcing the safeguards that Constitution demands. Let's be honest with the American people for once. You knew the risks, you knew the record, you knew the warnings, and you chose inaction. Justice delayed is justice denied, and Congress has made delay an art form. You allowed an adjudicated insurrectionist by the plain language of the 14th Amendment to walk back into power without completing the constitutional review you were obligated to conduct. You allowed massive, unprecedented political spending by a federal contractor to flood our elections, then looks the other way while the ethics infrastructure designed to prevent corruption was dismantled, defunded, or ignored. And let me be very clear, this was not accidental, this was enabling. You do not get to claim shock now. You do not get to wring your hands and say, if only we had acted sooner. You had years to impeach, years to enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, years to protect democratic guardrails instead of treating them like optional suggestions. And while Congress debated optics and polling, the consequences landed hard on real human beings. We now live in a country where investigative journalism and human rights reporting raise serious questions about unlawful detention, abusive conditions, and the outsourcing of punishment beyond public view, where allegations of concentration camp-like conditions are not dismissed with outrage, but with silence, where oversight is obstructed, ethics offices are weakened, and accountability is treated as partisan warfare instead of a constitutional duty. This is not democracy, that is decay. So today, as House Speaker, in satire, yes, but with deadly seriousness, I am done waiting for permission to do the job you were elected to do. I'm introducing Congress-ready resolutions, written, formatted, and ready for immediate votes, calling for enforcement of the 14th Amendment, removal of officials who enabled insurrection, disbarment proceedings for attorneys who violated their professional oaths, full restoration and funding of congressional ethics enforcement, immediate impeachment proceedings for ongoing abuses of power, emergency measures to restore democracy, democratic legitimacy, and emergency proceedings to transition back into democracy and hold emergency snap elections. And yes, snap elections to fill seats vacated by those who forfeited the public trust. If democracy is worth defending later, it is worth defending now. If elections matter next year, they matter this year. And if Congress will not act because it fears the political consequences, then let me remind you, the consequences of not acting are already here. To the American people, you are not crazy. You are not imagining this, and you are not powerless. This House can act today. The resolutions are written. The evidence is public. The Constitution is clear. So again, members, what are we waiting for? I'm Trista, your interim president. I approve this massage. Have a blessed day, all. Hey there, Jack Smith. It's me, Trista, the interim president and interim sheriff here in Tucson, Arizona. Guess what? I did your job for you. And I created a court-ready ready for filing motion to remand Diaper Chump into custody. Here, let's go. United States District Court, I guess it's Washington, D.C., right? United States of America versus Donald Chump, defendant, case number. Special counsel's motion to revoke conditions of release and order pretrial detention. Introduction. We should have done this years ago, by the way. The United States, by and through the Special Counsel, respectfully moves this court pursuant to 18 U.S.C. subsection 3142F and 3148B to revoke defendant Trump's conditions of release and order his immediate remand into custody. Yay! Since being charged, defendant has repeatedly demonstrated that he poses a clear and continuing danger to the community. That's an understatement. An unmanageable flight risk, especially with his brand new, spanking new $1 billion taxpayer-funded Qatar plane, exacerbated by his refusal to comply with court authority and commission of new unlawful conduct while under indictment. No combination of conditions can reasonably assure the safety of the community or the integrity of these proceedings. Procedural background. Defendant is currently released pending trial pursuant to conditions imposed by this court. Those conditions include, inter alia, prohibitions against committing new crimes, obstructing justice, threatening or intimidating witnesses, jurors, prosecutors, or judges, and engaging in conduct that undermines the orderly administration of justice. Despite repeated warnings from multiple courts, defendant has escalated, not curtailed, his unlawful conduct. Legal standard. Under 18 U.S.C. subsection 3148B, the court shall revoke release and order detention if it finds probable cause to believe the defendant committed a crime while on release, or clear and convincing evidence that the defendant violated any condition of release, and that no condition or combination of conditions will reasonably assure the safety of the community, or that the defendant will not obstruct justice. Again and again and again and again. The statute does not require speculation, it requires pattern, evidence, and risk, all of which are present here. Argument 1. Defendant poses a clear and ongoing danger to the community. Defendant's conduct is not abstract, rhetorical, or isolated. It includes public threats and inflammatory statements targeting judges, prosecutors, court staff, and witnesses connected to these proceedings, as well as anybody that says anything bad about him. Conduct that predictably incites harassment and intimidation by third parties acting on defendant's behalf. Repeated attacks on the legitimacy of the judiciary designed to undermine compliance with court orders. Courts have consistently held that indirect intimidation, when foreseeable and encouraged, constitutes danger to the community and obstruction of justice. Defendant's prominence magnifies the harm. His words function as operational signals to others. 2. Defendant has engaged in obstruction of justice and witness intimidation. The court may find obstruction based on statements targeting witnesses by name or description, attacks on cooperating individuals' credibility in a manner designed to deter testimony, statements intended to chill participation to judicial proceedings, and calling them up and threatening them with the loss of their lives or that of their family and loved ones. Defendant has shown inability or unwillingness to comply with lesser restrictions, including admonitions from multiple courts. 3. Probable cause exists that defendant committed new criminal conduct while on release. Probable cause exists that defendant committed additional offenses while under indictment, including but not limited to obstruction-related conduct, retaliation against witnesses, interference with the administration of justice. The statute requires only probable cause, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. 4. Defendant is a serious flight risk. Defendant's risk of flight is heightened by the severity of potential sentences he faces, his demonstrated disregard for court authority, his access to extensive financial resources and international contacts, his repeated public statements signaling refusal to accept judicial outcomes. Courts routinely detain defendants with far fewer resources and far less incentive to flee. 5. No combination of conditions can reasonably assure compliance. The court has already attempted lesser measures, including warnings and limited restrictions. They have failed. Home confinement, electronic monitoring, or gag orders are insufficient where the defendant's primary weapon is public communication and his influence over others. Pretrial detention is not punitive, it is preventive. And here it is necessary. Judicial notice, limited and proper. Pursuant to Federal Rule of Evidence 201, the United States respectfully requests the court take judicial notice of the following adjudicated facts for purposes of assessing risk and dangerousness only. Defendant's multiple felony convictions in New York State Court, civil adjudication establishing liability for sexual abuse, the recorded telephone call in which defendant solicited Georgia election officials to find votes, threatened them to, prior court findings concerning defendant's disregard for legal process. These facts bear directly on credibility, risk assessment, and likelihood of compliance. Public interest considerations. The Bail Reform Act expressly authorizes courts to consider the safety of the community as a whole, including protection of democratic institutions, protection of the judicial system, protection of witnesses and court officers. No defendant, regardless of status, is exempt from these principles. Equal justice under law requires equal application of detention standards. Conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, the United States respectfully requests that the court revoke defendant's conditions of release, order defendant remanded into custody pending trial, and grants such other relief as the court deems just and proper. Respectfully submitted. Special Counsel. I'm doing your job for you, Jack Smith. You're welcome. Special Counsel, United States Department of Justice. Here's a resolution for Congress to censure and remove itself. In the House of Representatives, a resolution censuring Congress, referring its members for professional sanction, acknowledging systemic constitutional failure, and calling for immediate restorative democratic measures, including snap elections, and a formal apology to the American people. Whereas clauses. Whereas members of Congress swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, yet have repeatedly failed to enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which bars insurrectionists from holding public office. And whereas following the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol, Congress seated and normalized individuals who aided, abetted, or provided comfort to an insurrection, thereby nullifying its own oath of office within days of swearing it. And whereas the Republican Party has been demonstrably captured by the interest of an adjudicated insurrectionist, a 34 times convicted felony, 34-time felony convict. It's like so astronomical, I can't even say it. And civilly adjudicated rapist, whom Noam Chomsky has described as the worst criminal in human history. And whereas credible testimony, civil judgments, criminal convictions, and sworn statements, including recent explosive public testimony, have linked this individual to extensive criminal enterprises, including those associated with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the big boss, whereas Epstein was his manager. And whereas Congress has failed to initiate impeachment proceedings despite a multitude of flagrant legal and constitutional violations, a landslide of criminality and obstruction of justice, contempt of Congress, and contempt for the rule of law. And as a result of Congress's stubborn refusal to hold him accountable, his latest distraction tactic is making repeated threats and actions advocating military aggression against allies, including Canada, Mexico, Greenland, and sovereign nations such as Venezuela, actions which would normally trigger immediate constitutional crisis response, and demands for psychiatric evaluation, especially since the world's mental health professionals have been clamoring for years about his mental, physiological, psychological, and moral unfitness and dangerosity, if that's a word. Whereas members of Congress certified national election results despite evidence that a federal contractor was permitted to spend approximately $300 million on election interference without a single objection raised on the House or Senate floor. And whereas such an action constitutes a deprivation of the American people's right to free and fair elections in violation of domestic constitutional guarantees and international democratic norms. And whereas peer democracies, including Germany and France, have taken affirmative steps to prevent similar interference, while the United States Congress elected passivity. And whereas Congress has stood idle while unlawful mass detention facilities described by human rights observers as concentration camps, including facilities such as Alligator Alcatraz, should be called Alligator Auschwitz, in Florida, have operated without constitutional due process. And whereas extraordinary renditions, unlawful deportations, and transfers to foreign detention sites implicate violations of the Geneva Conventions, the Rome Statute, and international prohibitions on torture. And whereas justice delayed is justice denied, and Congress's sustained inaction constitutes an ongoing betrayal renewed each day. And whereas attorneys serving in Congress and the executive branch are bound not only by constitutional oath, but by professional ethical duties which they have knowingly violated. and resolved clauses. Resolved that the House of Representatives hereby censures itself, collectively and individually, for a constitutional dereliction of duty. And resolved that the Congress of the United States formally acknowledges its failure to protect the American people from insurrection, corruption, rampant corruption, and authoritarian capture. And resolved that all members of Congress who are licensed attorneys be referred to appropriate bar authorities for investigation of professional misconduct and for allowing adjudicated insurrectionists, rapists, and 34 times convicted felon be sworn into office. And resolved that members of the executive branch and justices of the Supreme Court who provided aid or comfort to an insurrectionist be named for impeachment referral immediately, noting that congressional inaction does not confer immunity, and that they be recused on this vote since the 200 GOP traitors who voted to overturn the election in 2020, they are recused on this vote since they are complicit in January 6th insurrection, should be impeached themselves. Resolved that the United States issue a formal public apology to the American people for the systematic erosion of democratic governance and failure to act or respond appropriately to any of a infinite number of disasters and countless people harmed and traumatized. We are all traumatized, so Congress needs to apologize for all the trauma that is inflicted on the American people by its failure to act and defend us. And we'll all get veterans benefits when I'm president, so we will all get veterans benefits when you elect me president in 2028, that is if we have elections. Resolved that Congress calls for snap elections, supervised by independent international observers to restore democratic legitimacy, and resolved that credible allegations of crimes against humanity carried out by members and enablers and co-conspirators of this criminal, illegitimate misadministration be referred to the International Criminal Court, recognizing that no office confers exemption from international law, and resolved that the people of the United States reserve the right to convene Nuremberg 2.0 in the court of history, if not yet in law. I'm Trista, your interim president. I approve this massage given help. Murka. I am here today not because I wanted power, but because power abandoned its job. When prosecutors refuse to prosecute, when watchdogs refuse to watch, when the law hides instead of standing tall, someone has to speak, and today that someone is me, Trista Di Genova, your interim presidente and sheriff. Let's be clear, this is not about left or right, this is about law versus lawlessness. Jack Smith, Merrick Garland, you were not appointed to be historians. You were not appointed to be commentators. You were appointed to act. And instead you froze. While networks of insurrectionists walked free, while credible allegations of corruption, foreign entanglements, and abuse stacked up like cordwood, while the American people were told, just wait until the midterms. Wait for what? For democracy to bleed out quietly? From my perspective as a former psychology tutor at Oxford University, I recognize a familiar danger pattern. When a system enables pathological behavior, it doesn't calm it, it emboldens it. History teaches this lesson brutally well. Authoritarian movements don't collapse because people speak too loudly. They succeed because institutions stay silent too long. And let me say this plainly. Failure to investigate is not neutrality, it is complicity. When credible evidence, sworn testimony, whistleblowers' documents, and public records point to organized criminal conduct and the state shrugs, that is not justice. That is abandonment of duty. I am calling right now for immediate independent investigations, emergency grand juries, full release of sealed evidence, international referrals where jurisdiction applies, not vengeance, accountability. And Democrats, yes, I'm talking to you too. You don't defeat an authoritarian by whispering about norms. You defeat one by forcing daylight. Call the vote. Force impeachment debates. Make every representative go on record. If you're afraid to defend democracy publicly, then step aside and let the people replace you. As interim president and sheriff, my position is simple. If elected officials won't protect the Constitution, then the people will. We will not normalize insurrection. We will not excuse delay. We will not wait for tyrants to age out of accountability. History is watching. The world is watching, and the American people are done waiting. Jack Smith, do your fucking job. Merrick Garland, do your fucking job. Because if institutions fail, the people will remember who stood up and who stood down. America deserves courage. America deserves justice. And America deserves the truth. Now, not someday. Thank you. I'm Trista, your interim president, and I approve this massage. Give them hell. Call Congress switchboard 202-224-3121. Religiously demanding impeach the entire regime, call for snap elections, and give us a whole new government in a month's time. Sounds like a grand plan to me. Go ahead, Morgan. Hi there, Merca. I'm your interim president, Trista. And here's my resolution number 105, Congress Ready Resolutions for Congress, doing Congress's job for you. All of these are posted on my Substack. Okay, so here we go. Resolution number 105, invoking Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, Articles of Impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors against an entire executive administration. Whereas Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution provides that civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, and whereas impeachment is a constitutional remedy for patterns of misconduct, abuse of power, corruption, dereliction of duty, and violations of the public trust, whether committed individually or collectively, and whereas substantial public records, sworn testimony, judicial findings, indictments, convictions, settlements, and official admissions exist, demonstrating repeated and ongoing conduct by the current executive administration that implicates such high crimes and misdemeanors, and whereas such conduct includes but is not limited to participation in, encouragement of, or failure to prevent an insurrection against the constitutional order of the United States, persistent efforts to obstruct justice, intimidate witnesses, interfere with investigations, and undermine the rule of law, extensive patterns of fraud adjudicated in state and federal courts, and additional criminal matters pending or documented in public filings, abuse of the pardon power in a manner that frustrates accountability for crimes against the United States, that is, pardoning domestic terrorists, gross misuse of executive authority to retaliate against political opponents, weaponization of the DOJ, in fact, journalists, threatening journalists, interfering with elections with Jeff Bezos, whistleblowers, and private citizens, and whereas credible evidence in the public record demonstrates reckless or unlawful militarization of civilian law enforcement, aka ICE goons, going to the Hague, little piggies, including the use of force against non-threatening civilians in violation of constitutional protections with resulting loss of life and grave bodily harm, and whereas such actions, when undertaken as part of a pattern of intimidation or suppression of civilian populations, posse comitatus, by the way, raise serious constitutional and human rights concerns under domestic and international law, Geneva Convention, and the Rome Statute, and whereas additional public records reflect foreign entanglements with Israel and Russia, conflicts of interest, and self-emoluments clause violations up the butt, haha, pun intended, and actions inconsistent with the duty of undivided loyalty owed to the United States, and whereas prosecutorial discretion does not extinguish congressional responsibility of statements by law enforcement officials confirming the existence of evidence sufficient to convict, do not relieve Congress of its independent constitutional duty. You're supposed to be a watchdog, so I'll have to do your job for you, Congress. You're welcome, America. Whereas the American people have endured prolonged delay, justice delayed is justice denied, prolonged delay in accountability despite the urgency of these matters. Where are the insurrection charges? Where are the treason charges? Where are the domestic terrorism charges, Jack Smith? Send them all to the fucking Hague. I've done your job for you, by the way. Go scroll back. I did your job for you. We're remanding him into custody. You are. You're going to do it. I have a resolution. I have a motion, court-ready motion for you to remand him into fucking custody. I'm tired of this shit. That these articles are adopted as an emergency measure requiring immediate consideration under applicable rules. Rule 9, immediate vote. Everybody's going to get on the record. 3, that all matters referenced herein be formally referred to appropriate prosecutorial authorities like disbarment and inspectors general We're going to rehire the ones that Elon fired for further action consistent with law. 4, that nothing in this resolution shall be construed as a finding of guilt in a criminal proceeding, but rather as the exercise of Congress's constitutional duty. You're welcome, Merkab. Come back for my enforcement of the 14th Amendment, Resolution number 106. Just doing your job for you, Congress. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Guten Morgen, ich bin Trista, dein Interim President. And here's my concurrent resolution number 106, enforcement of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, automatic disqualification and removal of insurrectionists from federal office. Whereas Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is self-executing and prohibits any person who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution or given aid or comfort thereto from holding federal office. And whereas substantial public evidence demonstrates that numerous federal office holders engaged in or provided aid and comfort to an insurrection against the United States. And whereas failure to enforce Section 3 constitutes an ongoing constitutional violation. Now therefore be it resolved that Congress affirms the immediate enforcement of the 14th Amendment, Section 3. Yippee! Be dancing in the streets, Philadelphia, PA, dancing in the streets. Okay, here's the mini parts. That all federal office holders credibly implicated in insurrectionary conduct are deemed constitutionally disqualified from office. That such individuals are removed forthwith and referred for appropriate legal proceedings. I got your back, Merkab. That lawyers in federal office who knowingly enabled constitutionally disqualified individuals to hold power are referred to relevant bar authorities for review consistent with professional responsibility rules. You're welcome, Merkab. Just doing your job for you, Congress. Thank you for your attention to this matter.